Hello everybody, I got another job for you. Maybe you're just planning to sew yourself some trousers and don't quite know how exactly to do the pockets, to do the zipper in the front, and how to start and how to continue. So that's why I'm going to tell you today in the first part. Later on comes a second part, a third part, in parts how to do your trousers. So why don't we start by just talking and explaining about your pattern, the cutting you need. Maybe you have an old pattern already that you sometimes tried to use but then didn't really continue with it. I myself, I got a very old pattern which I keep using again and again, which I know it fits me, I'm satisfied with it, and so I use it again. If I want to make sometimes the legs a little bit wider or tighter, I change it just by cutting the legs different. Otherwise, also sometimes with the material. This one is a very stretchy jeans material, which is really nice and comfortable. That's why it can be cut quite tight, because I want it to really fit well on me. But if it's a linen or cotton which doesn't have any elastic in it, then you got to be a bit careful not to make it too tight. But now I'm trying to tell you the parts which you have in any good pattern that you can buy from all the good names that are around that selling patterns. First of all, of course, you got your back trousers part. Sometimes there is an extra part on the top, on the back part, which I have in my case here as well. It's not necessary to have this part, so if your pattern doesn't have this and it's just one piece, the back trousers, that's also alright. But if you wish to add one, because it always looks nice with this extra seam, then it's no problem to draw yourself a line, and it's usually that in the middle of the trousers the part is bigger in case if you want to draw this yourself, and towards the side of the trousers it goes a bit smaller. And then cut the pattern apart, but don't forget to add the seams that you need in case if you cut this pattern. So this is the two parts I got for my back trousers, and I want on each back trousers a pocket, which also you can do in any size you want to. Measure on some trousers that you have and you might like this particular size of the pocket. Make it smaller or make it bigger as you wish. I myself, I ironed this over already, 1 centimeter and 2 centimeters, and all around the edge 1 centimeter. So this will be the pocket I will be stitching on in a moment then, on both of the back trousers, all prepared right there. So we start talking about the front trousers. For the front trousers you need your zipper, of course, and you need the two parts for the upper and under where the zipper in the front goes. But as I said before, if you have a good pattern, these parts are in it, and you will see later how they will fit together to make the front zipper really nice on your trousers. Now to the pockets. I got a slightly round pocket here. You might have I'm just taking this apart so you see my round here. On your pattern there might be just sideways going. That doesn't matter, because what I show you, it doesn't matter if you have a round one or a cross going one. The work and how to do it is exactly the same, besides that you stitch straight or round. So besides this, you need a little part for going on top of your lining, the pocket lining, so it doesn't show when you look inside the pocket right away the lining. This is the facing for it, which goes on. I already did this on the overlock, so it's nice and clean. This will just be stitched on there later, you will see this. So that would be finished for that. Then you need the backing for it, which goes underneath to finish off your pocket where you go in there. This also I finished off the edge with the overlock already because it's only being stitched on. As well, on this pocket, on the right side, on my right side trousers, I like to have a tiny little pocket inside. You can see this on many jeans, which gives it another little effect, and you can maybe put a little coin in or whatever you need. This I ironed over the same as the back pockets already, 1 by 1 centimeter only, and I finished with the overlock this bottom off already, and these two sides are just going to be ironed over as well. And then your complete 2 pockets would be finished in a moment. So we practically got everything. Besides, if you want some loops for your belt, I cut one long loop here, 3 centimeters wide, and I finished one edge off with the overlock to then later on do these loops for my belt. Last but not least, you need your belt. I cut mine 10 centimeters wide. That means my finished belt will be 4, because you iron it in half, of course, then it's 5, and you need the centimeter here, so we have a 4 centimeter belt, and our loops will come on top there then. And that's all the parts you need for your trousers. So, let's get started. I'm starting by putting the saddle on my back part of the trousers on. I directly go onto my safety machine, overlock machine, and put the right sides on top of each other and just stitch that on all the way through. Edge on edge. As you know, I like to point this out to you. If your cutting was correctly by 1 centimeter, my overlock machine, my safety, does exactly 1 centimeter seam. That's why I got it prepared like that. Here, check again, how does it fit onto this part? Put the good sides on top of each other and go along the edge for your first sewing on this pair of trousers. In case if you do have this extra part on your back trousers and stitched it on, then you can either iron it, stitch it once or twice. I will stitch it twice, so I show you. I'm stitching on top of the little part, that means the seam is lying towards this middle part, not towards the bottom, because that's the usual how this is being done. I'm going to stitch the second part approximately 6 millimeters because my right foot is 5, and I just let it run along this stitch that I can really see this nice. That means I know I got a 6 millimeter stitching that I'm doing here on the second part. Now we want to prepare the pocket that goes on here. I first of all stitch along the top ones. As I showed you before, I ironed it over already, and as I got a very stretchy material here, I take right away my trick. I put this little guide on that I got here and stitch along, then it doesn't stretch out extra. For the second seam on this top pocket, I take my little guide here because I got 120 yarn in the bottom in my bobbin, which is quite thin, but I want this thicker yarn, a 70 thickness, on the top. So if I would stitch it from this side, I would now have the thin one down there, which I don't want. So I put this guide there to see how wide I want to stitch this, as I have it ironed like that. And I just go along here now. And when you now check on the back, you see, because the way we did this with the guide, You catched it all. It's perfectly done. And I got both my thick thread on the top the way I wanted it. Now we have to put this pocket on. I prepared my first side already. As you can see here, this pocket is on already. So I have to measure exactly to get the same widths and the same sizes from all sides. This has been ironed. I turn this over here, and I know I got a 6.6 here, and I want a 6.6 on this side, and the height the same as well. So I put the first needle in, the pin, and I check it over. You can measure to that as well. This is 2 there and 2 here, and here I just got a little bit less than 2. Exactly right, that's exactly how I want it. So I put a second pin in to hold this in position. You can, if you wish, of course, put more pins in. This is plenty for me though. So I just start sewing there, and as this is this very stretchy material, I immediately will take my guide, my piece of paper that I have here, to stitch along this edge to really get it nice and flat, because the way I do this here, I don't even need to iron this part. It's just perfectly in position when you work like that. As well, it's a very, very good trick for learners. If you haven't done so much stitching, make yourself out of a strong piece of paper,
cardboard.
Yeah, very thin cardboard part, a straight pattern, and then while the needle is in the material, put your guide, your piece of paper, against the needle, and then take your time. Go slowly, one by one, stitch by stitch, and that's how you learn also to really sew straight. So I'm looking towards my top there. I put that there, and I go all the way to the top. Now, I don't want these corners to show out. I'll take the pins out before I rip my hands open. So I'm just going to cut these 2 corners off on each side, and then I do my second stitching there, because then they don't show out. Again here I will let my foot just run along my first seam that I can still see it, and then I know I have the same width as I did up there. And you turn, and always when you turn, always make sure your needle is stuck in the material, otherwise you end up somewhere totally wrong, and that's something you don't want. Here's a half a stitch missing, so there you go. And I didn't do the inside of this pocket with the overlock because of the 2 seams that I'm doing here. It's not necessary. If you, by any chance, only want to have 1 stitching around the edge, then you should do it with the overlock first. So that's the first step. We got both of our pockets on the back trousers finished.
That means now I do the pockets on the front. I start by preparing this little extra pocket which goes inside my front pocket. I ironed it over already, as I showed you before, and I'll stitch once very tight and once with a 6mm stitch along the top of this pocket, as I ironed twice a centimeter over. Now I take the facing from my right pocket and this little pocket, which I ironed the sides over already. The bottom I've done with the overlock. So I only need to stitch the sides on, again with my little pattern, so I don't stretch out the material, and with a very small seam. The bottom I just go along as well, so it's already held for the next job. And here I go up with my small stitching. Do a good back and forward sewing as well. And now I'm just cutting these little corners out again, the same as I did on my pockets on the back trousers, so they will not show out. And I do an extra double stitching there as well, which holds the pocket nice and firm in. On this little short part I don't necessarily have to take my pattern, but you can, if you wish, do that anyway. So that means my little inside pocket is on and is finished. I know this material, it doesn't show it so well. I hope you can see everything while I go along and explain it to you. Now I take this facing and put it onto my first pocket piece. This edge has been done already with the overlock, as I told you before, and now I just go all the way around this with a small 3-4 millimeter stitching that will hold it very well down, and at the same time I really stitch directly in the middle of my overlock seam, as that holds it firm. After washing the trousers several times, they're still in a very good condition and don't start opening up or anything like that. So you do that all the way around on this little inside facing piece on top of your pocket piece. You can see it from this side how I went around. And we need to take the next part to go with this, which is the other facing that you need for the pocket where you slide your hand into it. We do exactly the same here. You only stitch with the 4 or 5 millimeter ones all the way around. You can do this on the lining if you wish, as I show you here. Then you don't need your pattern to put under the needle, because this lining is not stretchy, so it's quite quick to go around. And as I can see through the lining, my facing piece, and I can feel it, you can see it as well. So I just stitch my 4 millimeters on the edge around it, so that is finished as well. So that's the first prepared parts here. And that's the piece I need to go to do the edge for my pocket. But you can see this already, how this is done. But now I think, first of all, I should also do the opposite side of this facing, as that one doesn't fit to the first pocket I want to do. So you do exactly the same. You take this round piece, take your facing. Nope, that's the wrong way. You know, turn it around. And now I show you how to do it with the pattern from this side, in case if you prefer to see the main material. As I know this stretchy jeans material will push right away, I take my pattern, and it's so easy to go around. Then you really don't need no pins to use. This is amazing what this little piece of paper will do when you're sewing. You will be very, very surprised. Just try it. Again, there I go exactly through my overlock seam to hold it down very firm. There you go. All parts prepared. That's how the facing will look like. That means I can do my first pocket now. you start by taking your facing, which you just added on, and put this piece exactly on the roundabout that you, on the circle, sorry, it's not a roundabout, it's a circle where your cutting is. But as I mentioned before, in case if you just have a straight pocket, you would do this straight seam. 1 centimeter, I'm doing this, and now I will cut some little cuts in. If you have a straight pocket, that's not necessary. And on my first bits there to the left and the right where it's straight, I don't need to do this cut ins either. But here I definitely do that because it will fold much, much better. Now you could just take it, iron it and leave it. But I'm going to show you how to stitch this down first, see? Because this doesn't lie so well, especially jeans material. If you have many seams, it goes thicker and thicker. So this seam is lying towards your pocket lining, towards your facing that you have, and you stitch 1 millimeter on that part, practically stitching the seam down onto the pocket part. And when you look now, when I turn this around, it practically lies there on its own, only because you've done this against stitching there on the left side, on the inner side. So look at this again. The seam's lying towards the pocket, and you're stitching on that side, on that small part, and there it is, lying perfectly down already, without anything. You could just iron it and it would be finished. But as I've been stitching all my pockets twice, I will do exactly the same on this one as well. First with the small one. On this part now, my pattern to use underneath the pressure foot is not necessary because I got so many materials there already, especially the lining which doesn't stretch with it, which is all the way in the edge. That means it won't stretch out anymore. And I do the second seam on my 6 millimeters, as I did on all the other pockets as well before. There you go. That is finished. Now I take the opposite pocket piece with the facing on already, and now you have 2 possibilities. You could just look for your cuts, which will be on your pattern, to lay this in this position and add it on and close the pocket, and it would be finished. What I exactly mean is you have this possibility of saying, okay, I'm just closing along this edge now, my pocket by 1 centimeter, go along with the overlock, and it would be finished. That is one possibility. But maybe you don't even have an overlock. So you take this piece, not the good sides on top of each other, no. You take it over like this, so left on left is lying on top of each other. I repeat, this would be the easy way just to close it. But if you take this pocket piece and put it on the other side of this pocket, and now we're stitching this on the left sides being lying in the inside by a 5 millimeter seam. Shouldn't be any wider than that. In my case, that's just the width of my presser foot. And I stitch exactly this edge, 5 millimeters width, that one seam going all the way across. Now I turn this inside out. We call it a left-right seam. I don't know in English what you would call this. I ribble the edge out, or you can go and iron it. And I do a 8 or 10 millimeter seam now here, depending on how wide your first seam is. As mine was 5 millimeters, I do about 8 millimeters seam here, so the first seam will not show out on the other side. If your edges are not so correct on the first seam, you can just go along with the scissors and clean them off a little bit better. Then you can also do a 8 or 10 millimeter seam. So that means this pocket is really clean and tidy now, finished off on the bottom. And now all you have to do is stitch this little side on. And as this likes to really push the material, I immediately take again my pattern, put it on this edge and stitch the side on, prepared already for later to do the side seam. The same on the top, where the waist will be. You must look for your cuts to get this exactly done right. And take your pattern, put edge on edge, and do a 4 or 5 millimeter seam, just holding everything down, prepared for all the coming jobs for this first part of our right side of your trousers. There you go. That's the first side with a little pocket there.
So we continue with stitching this inner part from the facing for the pocket on. As well here I cleaned off already with the overlock the edge, because this is just going to be flat stitched on and not otherwise cleaned off. Again, I would like to mention that I have a very stretchy material. That's why right away I take my little pattern here, my guide. I put it onto the needle, not under it, but directly onto it. And I stitch along there, because that makes me, for sure, that my stretchy material will not stretch out. It stays perfectly there in position. And here as well, I will stitch right through my overlock stitch, because that gives it another strength, and when I put my hand inside or when it goes into the wash, this will really always stay firm and very, very tidy. These are the two preparations we have to do. Now you take your front part and take this particular piece by putting it on right on the right side, because now we do this round for the for putting your hand into the pocket. I'm falling over my language again, have you noticed? So here we do a centimeter now. Stitch should not be too big, because you got a round here. 1 centimeter all the way around. If you have a straight pocket, then you don't need to do any cutting in. But when you have a round one like this, on this straight part you don't need to do anything. On this straight part not either. But here, on this round, you should put a couple of cuts in, because that makes it really, really well lying inside. Then don't take it and try to iron it and stitching the edge right away. It's much, much better if you first stitch, we say stitch against on this material. That means your seam will be lying towards the pocket piece, and that's where you're going to be stitching on. That means pull this out well. Don't let it over roll anywhere. Just in this round, that's why. And when you have a round to stitch, don't try to always pull it straight. Let the machine take it in while you slowly move around at the same time on this part. 1 millimeter along the edge. And when you see now, when I turn it now, because I've done some cuttings on this round part and because of the back stitching there, it practically lies on its own there. Really nice and round. I show you again. The seam is towards the pocket, and that's my overstitching that I just did there. And here you can see it from this side, from the left side, but that's all right. And now I do exactly the same as I've done on all my other stitching so far. I want to double stitch a tight one on the edge, 1 millimeter as I like to say, and the second one will be 6 millimeters next to the first stitch that I have there already. Yes, it would be enough if I only do one, if I only want one, but usually when you start doing a double stitching, you do it everywhere, or you do one and that one you do everywhere as well. So now you have two possibilities. You can either say, after you put those together like that, here is your pocket, you could say, okay, you just go around this pocket now, this part, then go on your overlock and clean it off and it would be finished. But you also have another choice. Instead of just doing this seam, while there is the right and the right side lying on top of each other, or some people like to say when the good sides are lying on top of each other, you can take this part, turn it that way, so you got the left sides facing each other, the inner sides. I repeat, that would be the easy way, just to close it here, the pocket, and clean it off, or you just take it and put it against each other like that. And I show you how that works. You do a very small seam, maximum 5 millimeters. Put edge on edge of your material together. In case if your cutting wasn't very exact, you could just clean this off a little bit. Now you just turn it inside out, and depending on how small or how wide you did your seam, you do a 8 millimeter or a 1 centimeter seam right now here, and that gives you a real clean off pocket inside. You can iron it first if you wish, but that would take too long for you to watch if I would be doing all of that. So I'll show you from the left side. That's what this pocket looks right now. All clean from all sides. And it's practically finished now. Besides that, we have to stitch it on here together now to be able then to do the next jobs. Also these pockets when you cut, I don't think I mentioned this in the beginning. Very often these pockets are only going up here, which you can do, it's no problem. I prefer my pockets to go all the way in the front in the zipper to be held. Then when you put the trousers on, you don't need to fiddle with this. As you know, you put some trousers on and they might be tight. You always have to put your hands in first because the pocket pulled back while you were putting them on. Well, this will not happen when you got this pocket all the way to the front where the zipper will go in. So that means now we have to just do this millimeter or 5 millimeter stitching on this edge to hold it down all the way to here to the top, and the same on the side. Now you can put a little bit of width, which I like to do, a little bit of width in this pocket. First of all, your body goes a little bit round. That means if your pocket is totally tight, then you rather have width in the pocket, which is not nice. So you can add a little bit of width into here, as well as later on when the seam is here and that turns around, that takes width away again as well. So if you add a little bit of width in that top, it's a much better form and a much better wear. So now is my last, see, I'm putting this little bit of width on there, and I'm just gonna also close this side up already for one of the next jobs. And as you noticed, I keep using my little wonder weapon here for good sewing. Now you can see both fronts are done, both backs are done, all the pockets are finished. And this is for today the first tutorial on me making these trousers. I believe I will have time to do tomorrow the second part to continue with the trousers. It will definitely happen all this week, so you can continue after you've started doing your trousers so far. So thanks for watching so far, and come around for the second part for my trousers.